Haslam.
Do you know where the afters is?
Yeah, all right. Right, we're rolling. Right, well,
How are we doing?
Lee, welcome to the Afters.
Thank you, mate. I have to say I've been an avid listener since you started, so I think it's an amazing thing that you've been doing, so thanks for having me on.
That's really kind. We only started this fucking 10 minutes ago, so to hear someone's an avid listener makes us feel incredible.
Definitely.
No, thank you, but thanks for coming. I know you've travelled a little bit today as well.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It's I come to London as often as I can for obviously music industry purposes, so it's been nice to tie in a nice visit with you, because it's been a while now.
Well, to be honest, we'll get into it, but we've known each other a long time.
Yeah.
But we haven't actually sat down like this ever, have we?
No. I think the first time we actually properly met was on a flight to Miami. I don't know if you remember.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Surprisingly.
I was that memorable, clearly. But yeah, I was obviously managing Max at the time, and we bumped into each other on the
I do
on the
remember.
flight.
I completely
And
do.
I think that was
yeah.
the first time, and then yeah, obviously further down the line we got together, and I think I signed you for management the week before we went into lockdown. And
Well, stop there. We'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
But anyway, so I know who you are, obviously.
Yeah.
But for those at home who don't, who the fuck are you?
Well, that's a very good question. Where do I start? Well, my name's Lee Haslam. I've been in the industry now for, 28 years. Yeah, which makes me feel really old. I actually started off, my journey into the music industry is probably not a conventional one, because I wasn't really that engaged with music at school.
Right.
I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay. Teacher of anything in particular?
A primary school teacher, actually.
Okay.
So I did that. I worked at a private school in Doncaster, which is where I'm from. Worked in a private school for 4 years. But during that time, one of my very close friends, Stuart Jones, took me to a club in Sheffield called the Music Factory. Okay. And I ended up watching, who was it now? I think it was Jeremy Healy.
Oh, wicked.
That was probably the day that changed the whole trajectory of my life, because from that point on, it was all about clubbing. It was all about music.
Yeah.
And then over time, because I was teaching, I kept getting tonsillitis all the time. So my employer said, "Look, you're going to have your tonsils taken out."
They told you that?
Yeah, they told me that because I was having too much time off work.
Fuck, okay.
So
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You know, if you have your I was 22 at the time, something like that.
Yeah.
So if you have your tonsils taken out at that time, you have to have quite a bit of time off work, because it knocks you for six, because it affects your immune system and everything else.
Yeah.
So I had 4 weeks off work. So I thought, fuck it, I'll just buy some decks. And I actually taught myself how to mix.
What decks did you buy? That's the question.
This is Gemini belt drives.
Yes, fucking man.
Just like a starter kit, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I think the ones you had to, once the belt goes loose, you take the belt off and then you shrink them down and walk.
The pitch was at the front, and it was like it literally was about that big.
Yeah.
Minute, and but if you could mix on them, you could mix on anything. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I learned how to mix. And I used to go to clubs, Gatecrasher, Sunday Central. My idols were Scott Bond, Tony DeVee. Basically, I used to go week in, week out, and I'd go with my girlfriend at the time and just abandon her at the door and just go up to the balcony, and I would just literally stand and watch DJs play.
Really?
And that's how I taught myself how to mix, from, like I say, the greats that there were around then, Judge Jules, all these people. And Tony was really probably my idol at the time. He was the number one DJ. Unfortunately, he passed away. I think it was 1998. Yeah. But I learned so much from watching DJs, and obviously I started practicing a bit more. My girlfriend at the time then gave, this is how long ago it was a tape of me DJing to a local promoter, and I got my first gig, and then it kind of snowballed from there, really. I played a lot in my hometown, Doncaster, and then I got further afield, going to Leeds, Manchester, and then a good friend of mine, Steve Longley, worked for a company called the Music Factory Entertainment Group, who is the company that owns Tidy Trax, the label.
Yeah, I'm very aware of who Tidy are.
Yeah. So Tidy Trax have been around, still going very strong.
Yeah,
It's their 30th birthday next year, and they were looking for somebody to do their club promotions. And my mate, who was working there at the time, recommended me to a guy called Andy Pickles, who was one of the Tidy boys. And he came to watch me play. So I remember walking into this club and seeing him stood behind the decks and absolutely shitting myself, because obviously I knew who he was.
Yeah.
My mate Steve had not told me about anything that was going on, so it was kind of like I was dropped in it. But, you learn fast, and we got on really well, and he offered me the job. So I was like, right, I'm in a predicament now, because I'm I wanted to be a school, a primary school teacher, and now I've got an opportunity to get into the music industry. So,
And how old were you at that point then?
I
when you
was
had that
probably
opportunity?
22, 23.
Okay.
So I thought, yeah, fuck it, let's do it. And I quit my job.
Impulse?
Impulse,
Yeah.
total impulse, passion.
Incredible.
Didn't know anything about the music industry. Didn't know anything about record labels, but I thought I could learn fast. So that's exactly what I did, and started off there. Worked doing the club promotions. Saw the likes of Lisa Lashes, Paul Janes, all these big DJs, Anne Savage, Andy Farley, E&M, all these massive hard house names coming into the studio on a regular basis, and I was just hooked. And then obviously from there, I got promoted to label manager, and then Tidy really rocketed from like the probably 98 onwards. So I was running the events and helping with the label as well.
Yeah, amazing. So that stops us, what, 98 though, right?
98, yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
And then from that, we know that Lee Haslam is the artist as well,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I
so
mean,
you release music.
So at that point, yeah, I was obviously producing music. I was working full time as a label manager, so from 9 to 5 days a week, running the label.
Yeah.
Then as soon as I finished work, it was straight in the studio making music, releasing music on Tidy, and went from playing in my hometown of Doncaster to playing all over the world and touring, being an international touring DJ for the best part of 10 years.
So what did you like about touring, or is it?
It was different back then. The whole scene was different back then. You know, we were playing vinyl. The music industry was totally different. There was no internet. There was no social media. You know, you were touring. When you were touring with a box of vinyl, which
Heavy.
is pretty heavy. And there was no tour managers back then. It was just you. So sometimes it was quite lonely. You know, you were out there, like I said before, touring, playing in Japan, South Africa, America, Canada, you name it, middle of Russia I've played. So, and you're on your own. And so you have to learn fast, and, you meet people along the way, but you're doing the bulk of it on your own. But I didn't mind that, to be fair. I got on with it. I always knew that as soon as I got back off the plane, I was straight back to the office, because there was, the label to be run. So that kept me on the straight and narrow, really.
And when did you transition? Because I know you from a manager's point of view, okay? We'll get onto that in a minute. But when did you go from, because we're probably going to fast forward quite a bit, from that artist who was on the road, managing the label, what year was it when you went into managing artists?
So that was about 2012. So, I left Tidy in 2007, and then I started working for another brand called Slinky, which is a trance brand based down in Bournemouth. And I ran Slinky for about 7 years, and then had kids. And then decided, look, I don't want to be doing this touring as much now. I just can't. Obviously, I want to see my kids grow up. And thought, the next phase for me is obviously probably management. And I started working for a company called Fresh Artist Management.
And that's when we met.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. So they were looking after people like Judge Jules and people like that. But I wanted to start a new roster with a new sound. Obviously, I was really into the underground sound, then obviously the house stuff, tech house that was starting to bubble under then. And Max was my first signing, Max Chapman. So signed Max, and then obviously built the roster from there. Signed with Left Wing Cody, Piero Pirupa, a few others. And then I left Fresh, I think it was 2008, 2018, sorry. Yeah, and then set up Locust Management, which with my other colleagues, David Bourne and Ross Canavan.
Well, so I'm going to go back a little bit here. So when Max was with you, I'd met Max, I can't remember what time when me and Max met, but it was probably around the 16, 17. When did you actually start working with Max?
I think
what year was it, roughly?
It must have been about 2015, 16.
Okay, so you'd already been with you. But I remember vividly speaking to Max, and I had this very interesting game of Comparisonitis. I was like, right, Max is playing this fucking show, and he's got a Hot Creations release coming up, and he's done this and this and this and this. And I remember at the time vividly going, I want fucking Lee Haslam as a manager. And I'm sure I reached out to you a couple of times, and I remember the first time I reached out, you were very honest, and you said, thanks for reaching out, but I just haven't got the capacity. You had too many artists. And I remember being very impressed by that, because you knocked back an artist who obviously would have brought you more revenue. But you said no because it would have had an impact on the other artists you had. And I thought that was that was very endearing to hear that, because, and at that point I wanted you fucking more. I was like, this guy is literally everything I wanted in a manager. And obviously at the time I was going through a very turbulent time with my management, and it wasn't even at the turbulent time when I was reaching out to you, but I kind of saw the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
And saw how well you were doing with Max. And every time I spoke to Max had nothing but good things to say about it. I was like, just fucking stop saying such nice things about him. But yeah, I remember that point vividly, and just thinking, you know, that you could see clearly that you were grafting for your artist. You were putting the work in, and you'd be surprised, or you won't be surprised, but people out there will be surprised at how many managers are out there just taking 20% or 15% and not really doing anything. Yeah. They do a little bit at the start, and they get them on board and get them like sweetened, and once they start to get those shows, they just kind of sit back. Yeah. And it's really common. But that's my first memory of really kind of starting to really know who you are, because you really showed your colours there, and I was really impressed by that.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, well, I'm a strong believer, you know, if you're going to, you're investing your time in somebody else's dream at the end of the day, and you have to be really devoted to it 100% to be able to deliver what they want. And I've been approached by people before, and even if I've had the capacity, if I don't feel it's right for me, then I wouldn't do it, because at the end of the day, it's my reputation on the line, and I've worked too hard in this industry to have a good reputation. Absolutely. So I'd rather just be honest. Yeah. Well, you know, there was a point where I had 6 artists managing them. Obviously, they're all different, varying positions in the career, but that was, you know, my max of what you can do, because realistically, there's only enough hours in the day. Yeah. And as an artist manager, literally, you are working 24/7, because from the minute you're waking up, you're either speaking to somebody in Australia, or you're speaking to somebody in the UK, or at the end of the day, you're speaking to somebody in America. And if you're doing your job properly, you're having all these conversations with different people, promoting the artists and activating their plan, then you have to be 100% devoted to it. So
let's talk about that a little bit, like in terms of a manager's role in this kind of music industry. For people out there, maybe a young artist coming up who haven't had a manager yet, you know, let's just go through the role of a manager. What is the role of a manager, and what are they there to do in order to help or work with an artist?
Well, it's to realise the aspirations of the artist, you know, to help them get from A to B. I always say you're there to join the dots. You know, it's about, ultimately it's the artist that's got the dream, and who they want to work with, what labels they want to be, the sound, and it's your job to sit down and build the strategy of how you're going to do that from the ground up. And unless you build really strong foundations to begin with, it's never gonna come to fruition. So, you know, the first step is obviously sitting down with them and listening to them about where they've been, what they want to do, where they want to go to, and then offering your advice as to how you can do that. You know, building relationships with the right labels, working with the right promoters. You know, a lot of people out there just think it's a yes game, and it's actually not. You know, careers are built on the things that you say no to rather than the things you say yes to, because it's very easy to say yes, but that might not be the right show, might not be the right promoter, might not be the right label. So you've got to really be really solid with the foundations and the plan that you've got to begin with that artist. And if that means, you know, you only want to work with 5 labels, these are my dream labels that I want to build with. If those 5 labels, you send your music to those 5 labels and they all say no, you don't then go to a 6th or a 7th further down the line. You've got to stick to the plan, because you can release. I get it. As a producer, I've been there myself. As a producer and DJ, when you make a track, fuck it, I want to get it released.
Yeah, instantly.
You're excited.
Yeah, of course.
And you
put it out.
But you can do that. You can release it on a label that might be 7th, 8th, or 9th on your list. But realistically, what impact is that going to have on what your plan is? You know,
that's an interesting point to touch on. What impact does that have on? Because I was always told that, you know, let's just use this it's a very generic example, but everyone wants to be signed to Hot Creations, or it was a big thing, right? Yeah. I want to be signed to Hot Creations. I'm putting tracks out, sending them to Jamie. Jamie's getting back and saying they're all right, but like keep sending. And you go, right, okay, this isn't fucking working, but I've got another 5 or 6 labels who are like maybe 8th or 9th down the list. They'll release it next week or next month, right? Yeah. But I just need music out, right? People aren't going to know who I am if I don't get music out. So what effect does that have on you getting signed to the bigger labels down the line? Is it a bigger impact, or?
I think less is more.
Okay.
For me as an artist, I would rather release 2 records that are massive in a year than release 10 that don't really chart and don't really do much, because all it is a bit of self-gratification, probably, that you want people to hear your music. Well, that's what SoundCloud's for.
Yeah.
You've got A&R, you've got A&Rs from all the major record labels constantly on SoundCloud. Build your fan base.
Yeah.
You can release stuff through Bandcamp if you want to.
Loads of people are doing that. I saw Josh Butler was putting stuff out, putting tracks on there, and they were selling, and he also getting his music out, and he doesn't have to fucking sort of deal with the label, and he's not like compromising his integrity by putting it on a smaller label. He's just releasing it himself.
At the end of the day, you're retaining your IP. The music that you create is your asset. Yeah. If you sign it to a label just willy-nilly because you just want to get it out, well, that you might want to do something with that track further down the line. You know what I mean? You might want to pitch that out to another producer who may be bigger and do a collaboration with them. Yeah. There's lots of different ways and means of doing it. But I think the knee-jerk reaction is that you want to get music out because you want people to hear you. That's great, but especially these days with social media, build your fan base, put it onto SoundCloud, get recognition that way, and get the plays that way, because you can use that ammunition then. Because an A&R is just looking for the next big track.
Yeah, huge.
If they see something on Spotify or on SoundCloud, that's popping and getting great reactions, I've done it before when I've sent a track to a label. They've turned it down, and then 6 months later they've come back and wanted to sign it because it's popping. So you have to be patient with it, and that is really, really difficult when especially when you're starting out.
I remember having a conversation with you. We had that conversation you were talking about where, when we first, sorry, let's go back full circle again. I obviously left, so it wasn't actually left. COVID came 2020, right? Yeah. March 2020. We reconnected just before that, right? So we actually signed a deal to work together in February 2020, something like that.
It was March.
Was it 2 weeks?
It was literally, yeah.
So I was just about to go to South America. Yeah. I was going back to Lost Beach Club. I was going to do Australia and all this stuff. Yeah. And finally, we had a conversation. I think I started talking to Ross actually originally, and then we started talking, and then I was buzzing because I finally got the manager I wanted. Yeah. I was like, "This is great." Yeah. Right. After all these years. 2020, I think I first, put my feelers out with you about 2017. You said we couldn't do it. 2018, you said you couldn't do it. 2020, I was there. Like, this is the manager I've wanted. I was a free agent. Perfect. And then 2 weeks later, went into lockdown. And obviously, as people know who listen to this podcast, I didn't go back into the music industry. So it's kind of sod's law because we never actually got to work together properly. I think we did one show. I think I played, or maybe, I did the Studio 338 show, and I went to Dubai once as well. So it was a couple of shows. But we were working with you was completely differently, because we got on a call, we went through everything. So just exactly what you said there, like, who do you want to work with? What's the labels that you want to work with? And we made a list of them, and like, which shows do you want to play, and where do you see yourself in 3-5 years or whatever? And I never had those questions asked. It was always what was in front of me. So what's available now? Who's interested in you? Like, the managers I've had in the past have said, oh, I've been speaking to this guy. They might be interested in music. And it was never like about what I wanted. I was just like giving them music, and they were just putting it out and seeing what stuck, throwing shit against the wall, basically. Yeah. But with you, we sat down, went through this list, and I really felt like this is the right fit. I just wish it had happened 4 years before.
Yeah, me too.
We don't know what would have happened, if that had been the case.
And that's it. From a manager's point of view, you've got to listen to the artist. It's not your dream. You're there to help them get their dream. And that's, I think, maybe my experience. I mean, I never had a manager.
Oh, you didn't?
No. I was kind of like self-managed almost, but managers weren't really a thing back in the late 90s and early 2000s. They were for obviously the bigger guys like your Oakenfolds and people like that. But for DJs at my level, there wasn't really management. So obviously, I learned a lot of what I've done through just making my own mistakes, to be honest.
Just tripping up. And
but ultimately, if you are working as a team, there's no point in me sitting here and saying you will play on this label, you will play for this brand, because it's never going to work. No. It's got to be back and forth, and you are literally. I used to talk to my artist more than my wife, and she will say that as well. Back in. Yeah. But, me and Max used to talk 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day, just about loads of different stuff.
I remember being with him in the studio, and you would call him every couple of hours I'd hit you, see his phone ring.
Or messages or whatever.
And also, that's what stuck out for me as well, because I might not hear from my manager for 4 days until I get my itinerary on the Thursday, and he'll go, which flight do you want for this? And then that'll be it. Some weeks. Yeah. And I saw the communication between you and Max was like, it was incredible to see.
I mean, Max, Lefty and Cody, Pierre.
Yeah, Chris and John,
every single day, even if it's not a call, it's certainly like we have a WhatsApp group, and we're always coming up with ideas and talking about strategies and what we need to do and planning. That's what you should be doing as a manager. So I think
the relationship between the artist and the manager is super important. Clearly by everything you're saying. How important is it to find the right manager, and how does an artist even choose a manager? Because
it's hard. I mean, the one thing I would say advice-wise is never go out to look for a manager.
Like you don't go out looking for a girl. Don't go out looking for a girlfriend because you'll never find one.
They'll come when you least expect it.
Yeah.
You want a manager that's going to come to you and really sell themselves to you, and you want to see that passion that they've got for your. I've done it before historically. I've managed an act for nothing for a number of months to prove that I am dedicated to their cause.
Amazing. Now,
I didn't have to do that.
No, of course.
But I did it because I believed in that act.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did it because I still manage them today. So it pays off because you want somebody who's really invested in what you believe in and what your goals are. Because if you haven't, they're not going to go that extra mile to go for you.
Well, this is again coming back to how when we worked together, we went into lockdown. And you did so much fucking work with me, knowing there was going to be no return on investment for fucking how long's a piece of string?
Yeah.
Because when we went into lockdown, we had all these shows lined up, but they all got cancelled.
Yeah.
I remember when I had those tours booked to South America and Australia, and the flights were paid for, obviously because all shows were landed pretty much.
Yeah.
I remember speaking to Ben at Radius, Ben King, and he said, "It's all right, we'll push the shows back 3 months." So I would change all my flights back 3 months, thinking that in 3 months this will all be fine. It's all going to be washed over. Airports will be back open. You'll be on the road. So I changed my fucking flights, thinking that was going to be fine, and it wasn't. And I remember how much work we did in that time between March and I can't remember when it was. It was probably the following August, right? So it was well over a year that we were like working together. But I think towards the tail end of that 2021 year, I wasn't really doing much, but. We did the writers' camps. Made all those tracks. We were trying to get shows lined up and trying to build relationships. We worked on the new logo and rebranded myself as a brand. Everything was kind of working, knowing that you weren't making a penny off that. And again, that just goes to show that you're invested in your artist.
Yeah, you have to be, 100%. And it was a really tricky time, for everybody in the industry because, like you say, we didn't know how long it was going to last.
No,
some DJs just didn't do anything and just. Down tools. Some labels did that. Do you know what I mean? But I think you needed to try and keep as busy as you possibly could. Like Chris and John, I know they were doing a lot of sessions. Pierre was doing a lot of sessions. But then obviously a number of the underground guys, because they relied so much on the live stuff and weren't, there's not a lot of money in underground dance music, as you well know. So it's a tricky one to balance, really.
But you pushed through, and let's fast forward a little bit then. So. Forget about me and us not working together anymore. After that, so now, sat here today, what is your position? What are you up to? What's your projects? Are you still managing artists?
Yeah,
or you are?
Well, I'm still managing. I mean, COVID was a tricky time, obviously, like I said. At that point, I think I was managing about six acts then.
Okay.
In the last probably year to 18 months, I've reduced right down to 2. A lot of that was artists leaving, which was quite an impact on me because a lot of those artists I'd managed for quite a long time. But obviously, when COVID hit, it changed the scene dramatically. And I think it's something that obviously, I know you talked to Huxley about it on his podcast. There's a massive gulf now between the live scene that was pre-COVID to what it is now. And that's been accelerated by COVID in the sense that.
What do you mean by that? Sorry, I'm not following the difference between.
So when all the guys that I was looking after were touring a lot, live music, doing good numbers in the music. Then COVID hit, and then when we came back, it was almost like somebody had flicked a switch, and then the whole booking ethos for promoters.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, okay.
So they were booking really big headline acts, but then filling the lineup up with more up and coming acts. So that middle section, there were the second headliners, third headliners, the support acts were really hit hard.
I got out the fucking right time then, didn't I? Because that's exactly where I sat. It really was.
Yeah.
I'm laughing about it, but
there's so many amazing producers out there and DJs that have since COVID have come back. There's been a real shift because of that. And I don't believe it. Promoters, they just want to sell tickets.
Well, they have to sell tickets.
They have to recoup the losses. So
absolutely.
So they've obviously looked at their booking acts that will be guaranteed ticket sellers, whereas before there were a lot more smaller venues that you could break talent with. Yeah. Those clubs aren't there anymore.
Like the 200-300 cap ones.
Yeah. Where you could get your second-hand headliners on a big festival, for instance, might headline a smaller venue.
Yeah.
But they're all gone.
So Josh Parkinson was talking about that. He was in the other day. He was talking about he's working with this guy's called Save Our Scene.
Yeah.
And he was talking about the rate at which clubs are closing. Yeah. That, in the next 5-10 years, we might have none of these intimate clubs are going to be left. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, but you're right. It's, and those feeder clubs, because they're not there, a lot of artists are really, really struggling to get shows, and that has a big impact because obviously, if you're an underground dance DJ doing tech house or whatever, your gigs are your bread and butter. That's what pays the bills. You're making music for more promotional purposes.
Absolutely.
But then, having said that, even if you're an artist that streams big numbers, you're not going to make a huge amount of money. I mean, put it into perspective. If you did 65 million streams in a year, on master royalties alone, you're probably going to earn about 25 to 30 grand a year.
How many millions?
65 million.
So you need 65 million streams to make 20 grand.
Yeah, bearing in mind that most dance music tracks that are streamed involved multiple artists, so a singer, a producer, sometimes two producers. So when a Spotify are paying 0.0001 pence per stream, not even 1 pence, 1 cent per stream, then obviously the label, they've got to take their costs out of that. Then they're going to take their share out of that. Then they're going to split the royalties out of that. So who can survive on 25, 30 grand a year? But tell me how many artists of that size are actually doing those numbers? Not many.
Yeah.
So unless you are touring, it's fucking hard work. So that's why a lot of people, great producers are having to diversify and, do sample packs and all these other things that you can do to supplement their income and ghostwrite for other producers, do a lot of writing camps. I mean, a lot of great writers out there, but you don't get paid for writing. You could do a month's worth of writing camps, but you won't get paid for hardly any of it. You've just got to hope and pray that one of those tracks that you do in those camps gets signed to a label and you get a cut.
It's almost like a lottery. It's like a lottery, isn't it, really? You're almost gambling your time because you have no idea whether any of those ideas are going to pop. Yeah. So you're basically just winging it and hoping that something sticks.
Yeah, and it's all about working with the right people there. You could write 10 tracks in a year, but only one might get picked up and signed. Yeah, you can't plan on something like that. So it's very, very, very hard since COVID, and the whole, the social media aspect of it as well. It's gone from, I think pre-COVID, it was very much, pictures of you dining out in swanky restaurants and Lear jets and all this lot, and it's like, I think it's kind of shifted. It's more about being honest now because during COVID, if you didn't have music, and you weren't releasing anything, you weren't DJing, well, what were artists supposed to do? Yeah. And what they did is they invested their time on social media, and that's why I think people like Hannah Lane, Ben Hemsley, Chapter and Verse, all these guys, they sell themselves. They are the product. The artist is the product. Yeah. So if you've not got the music, you have to build strong foundations again, going back to what I said earlier, and build your fan base. And people now just want to get to know you. They're not necessarily fooled by the glossy images that you can post. People with direct lines of communication and artists who actually talk to the fan bases and go on video and get your personality across, they're the ones that have done really well after COVID because people buy into them more. Yeah. And that's why promoters want to book them, because they're hard ticket sellers. They can put a show on and sell 6,000 tickets
without
like that.
Trying, like Shaq, Shaq from Newcastle. Yeah. I remember seeing him. Because I'm out the loop now massively. Honestly, I'll speak to some people and they're like, "Have you heard this new track by X artist?" I'm like, I have no idea who that is. And they're like, you have no idea? And I'm like, listen, I don't have a clue. Anyway, I came back. I was kind of coming back. When I was starting to look at this, doing this podcast, I was kind of looking on Instagram and stuff. So I had a massive hiatus off social media. I just needed a break.
Yeah.
Come back on and I saw this lad called Shaq, and he's coming talking to the camera like proper Geordie and being himself, and he's a personality. That fucking sells itself. But another bigger example, like Fisher's a perfect example of this. Like he just comes
100%.
on, he's just a daft lad, just being normal, being silly, and people really, it's been about being relatable.
Yeah, 100%.
And that comes across in the social media stuff. I remember, even like a couple of weeks ago, I remember like looking at, it might have been Hannah Lang or Shaq or someone like that, and going, because I was so busy having fucking fun and getting wrecked, right? Honestly. I didn't even get like friends who come on the road with me. I didn't even get them to take videos of me. I remember looking at my maps where I've been and had like pictures taken, right? And looking at where I'd played. And in 60 or 70% of those places, I haven't even got any content. Not even a video of me playing. I'm like playing these amazing shows, but I was so busy on like, where's the tequila? Like, fucking give me a line, whatever it was, being silly. I missed out on all that content, which again, like you said, that's what would have sold. Yeah. That's what you put on social media to keep that fan base or build that fan base. Yeah. I didn't have it.
And Max won't mind me saying this, but I used to pull my hair out with Max because he used to do exactly the same. He used to play these amazing shows, and I'd go, first thing I'd ask him, did you get something? It was like,
nothing.
Hi, Max, I love you, but fuck me.
Yeah.
You know, but anyway, the thing is it's not easy either. You know, it's not every artist feels comfortable doing that.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah,
you know,
it takes a certain personality.
I am so glad there was no social media when I was a DJ because I would have been shit. I'm just not that type of person. Yeah. But unfortunately, in this day and age, it's a prerequisite that you have to invest in that. You know, you look at people like Fleur Shaw now, who's blowing up. She's invested so much in the social media, and she's absolutely killing it at the minute. And, you know, if you can couple the image online with a great fan base, and then you add music to it, then that's why you're getting these big spikes of like huge artists like Ben and Hannah and all the people that we just spoke about.
That's interesting. So, like, I've never thought of it that way. It's a prerequisite. It's part of the package.
It is.
If you're not active. So this is a thing. I remember having this conversation about being a producer, say like 10 years ago, and being like, there might be some amazing DJs. Forget about social media. This is before social media, right? There might be some really talented producers and DJs who just DJ in the bedroom. Yeah. But if they're not going out to the club to hand a USB or a tape or a CD or whatever it was right back then, no one knows who you are, right? But now there's a platform for that. And if you're not using that platform, not even just using it, you have to be using it the right way. So you might be getting photos at the gig or whatever, but then you've got like, say, like Shaq coming on and like, oh yeah, how's it going, lad? That stuff, and like just being like really like just daft in himself. And creating this persona, not creating persona, he's a personality, right? And he's putting that out to the world. That's part and parcel of it. And that puts you ahead of the rest, which is interesting because not everyone's that extrovert. There's a lot of introverts who will be very talented at what they do, but because they haven't got that outgoing personality, that might hold them back, and that's interesting.
Yeah, there's ways and means of doing it, though. You know, you need to play to your strengths at the end of the day. So if you're not like a gregarious, outgoing person like Shaq, and who just wants to go like what you just said, there are other ways that you can do it. You know, if you're really, you know, you might be a really geeky producer. So there's ways of, you know, getting people into the studio. And I've often said to my artists, even if you're in the studio, just get a camera, press record, and just forget about it, and just do some jamming. And then you might be able to go, oh, that bit was wicked, so I can rewind, use that asset, use it as a story. Absolutely. You know, I could sit down and write an artist a full month's plan of social media of what they can do, but at the end of the day, if they don't do it, there's
nothing you can do.
You know, you can lead a horse to water in some cases, but you can't always make it drink. But I think the pressure, you can't put too much pressure on people to do something that they're not comfortable with. They've got to be comfortable with it, otherwise it won't work, and it's not honest.
Yeah, I resonate with that actually a lot, because I remember I didn't know whether I was going to tell you this actually. I actually called my wife on the way through, and I was like, look, I've got this story I want to tell Lee, but I literally just popped it in my head this morning. I've got this story I want to tell Lee about when we were working together, but I don't know whether I should tell him. She was like, tell us what it is. And I told her, and she went, be fucking honest, tell him. So I was like, all right, okay, I'm going to tell him. I'm going to tell you. So when we were working together, this was towards the very end, we were doing that writers camp.
Yeah.
So I was making tracks and sending them back and forth. We're sending them to vocalists, and the vocalists were sending top lines back and working together. Now, we had that that day planned where we were supposed to, I was going to go in the studio in London, and I was going to go in with, I can't remember what his name was, but we're going to go in the studio and we're going to be on calls with all the guys on the, I think we had like a schedule for that day, right? So I was going to come into London and I was going to do that, and we were going to come out with hopefully like 4 or 5 tracks, right? Now, that same night, so that week, my friend, one of my best friends at the time, had been going through some trouble with his missus, and they actually broke up, and he was in a really bad place. So I was like, right, this happened the week before, but I was like, right, this is the only day I can do it. And I'm in London next day for this writers camp, so I'll be in the studio the next day. I hired an Airbnb with some friends. And I got all his like good friends together, and we basically had a bit of a smash up, right?
Yeah.
And the next day I woke up and I was like, I did get a few hours sleep, but I was like, fuck, I'm not going to be like, I look like shit. I hadn't had much sleep. I'm fucking hungover. Lee's going to kill us, and what am I going to do? So I was like, right, I'm going to call Lee, and I'm going to tell him that I think I've got COVID.
Oh, mate.
Do you remember?
Yeah, I don't remember.
You don't remember? Oh, thank fuck for that.
Right, I could have said yes.
But basically, I was in London, and the studio was an hour away where I was from, where I was at the time. And I just said, I called Eleanor, went, I'm not sure I can go to this. I feel awful. I'm sweating. Like, obviously, you can smell drink on us. I said, right, I'm going to tell Lee I've got COVID, and I'm going to go home. And he said, I think you said at the time, you can do it from Zoom. So I went home, and we did it on Zoom. But that was, so this comes back again to something I've talked about in the podcast before, is you've got to be in 100%, right? And I clearly wasn't in it 100%. That was an opportunity for me that you'd lined up, that you worked hard on in the behind the scenes, lining all these artists up, all these, it was through the publishing, whatever we were doing. Yeah. You lined all these opportunities up for me to come in and work in the studio for a full day for all these people. Again, no return on investment at that point. We hadn't really been able to do any performance, and I just fucking blew it. And it comes down again to what I prioritize. I prioritize just fucking partying, having fun, just being stupid, and not being responsible. So what I'm trying to say is these opportunities are there. It depends how much you want it. Yeah. At the start of my career, I was so hungry for this. I would have done anything. Yeah. And my first manager was like, right, you got a gig here and then a gig here the day after, but you got to do 3 flights to get there. Now, some of his bigger artists were like, there's no fucking way I'll do that because I've done all that shit in the past. Yeah. And he was like, you're probably not going to mind. I was like, fucking put me on any flight. I don't care. Yeah. But as I got further into it, the party it took over my life a lot, the drink and the drugs and all that stuff. But I wanted to tell you that story because I felt really guilty about that for ages.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, though.
I thought you'd be dead angry at me. I was like, you can't even fucking remember, so it's fine.
It's I think shit happens. You know what I mean? I've been in the industry long enough to know what goes off, and it's cool. At the end of the day, that's part and parcel of being a manager. You don't get paid for everything you do. In fact, you probably get paid for about 20% of what you do. But that's part and parcel of the gig. You know, you know that when you get signed up to it. You know, when you take on a new act, you know you're not going to get an immediate return. Yeah. It takes time to build that up if you're going to do it properly. So absolutely. That's something you take on the chin, but I appreciate that. Yeah, sorry, you'll be able to sleep better now.
I feel a weight lifted.
Yeah.
Our last was like, it'll be fine. I was like, I don't know if I should say this on air, but I'm going to be honest. I'm glad I told you. Mate, actually, so fast forward then after that, a project you're working on now, which I really like. Is Northstar 360. I like to give you the reins a little bit, let you talk about it, but tell everyone a little bit what Northstar 360 is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm still involved in Locust, the management company. I still manage Chris and John, Lefwin Cody. I manage BK, the Hard House producer, and a guy called Paul Clark as well. So I'm still doing that in the background, but a project came to light beginning of last year. My office is at Talyard North, which is in Wakefield, so I work there every day, 5 days a week. And one of the guys who I work with is Andy Pickles, who I mentioned earlier. He runs a company called the Music Factory Entertainment Group, and Northstar 360 is a subsidiary company of that. Now, it's effectively a record label, but it's also a talent incubator for aspiring artists. But where most record labels focus on probably 18 plus, our focus is very much on the younger adults. So we nurture kids between the ages of 13 and 17. So I've got 3 kids myself, 2 of which are in comprehensive school, and very musically minded, but fucking hate music.
Really?
Because it's so archaic, you know.
Okay.
Yet there's a space for playing a trumpet and everything else.
Oh, so is it still like that?
It's still very much like
Wow.
that. Yeah, yeah. And they touch on a bit of electronic music, but not to the degree of what we try to do. So we felt there's a real niche in the market where we can go into schools, or we can get kids from schools into our facility, and we can give them real world experience of what it's like to be in the music industry. So
amazing.
In August, we did a pilot scheme with Wakefield Council, and we went through an application process with all the schools in the local area, and 30 kids came into our facility over the summer holidays for a week. And we gave them a proper sync brief from the Stranger Things series, an actual brief that we got from the production team.
So it's what they would get if you were
them. So their next year, I think Series 5 of Stranger Things was the year of 90. I've never actually watched it myself.
Oh, have you not?
No, I've not. No, my kids have, but I've never had the chance.
Big fan.
The year was 1987. So they gave us 5 tracks that they were looking at to get what they call reimagined. So you've seen it before, like a Lloyd's TV advert. You'll hear a song that you know, a really famous song, but it's a totally different version you've never heard of before.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's called flipping hits, basically.
Okay.
And there's a label and a wonderful lady called Emma Stakes, who I work with at Tileyard North. She's got a label called Reimagined, and her label does exactly that. She gets tracks from a publishing company called Hypnosis, and they basically reimagine those tracks. They'll do, a Pretenders track and make it into a chill-out version for a specific film. So this brief was an actual real-world brief that we'd had from the Stranger Things production team. So these 30 kids, bearing in mind they've all had some background in music, either they're in a band or they're looking to do maybe a BTEC or a Masters in music when they get to college or university. So we divided these kids up into groups of 5 with a lead producer who we work with, and they basically got given the brief, and they'd go into these studios. A lot of them were singers, guitarists, drummers, some amazing talent. And they all went away for the week, and they learnt how to reimagine the track. And they all played
in 1 week, just
in
in
1 week.
Wow.
It's obviously, we keep the courses quite fast-paced to keep their engagement.
Got you.
But what we do with these development camps, this is like an entry level. So there's 3 stages to what we do. We've got development camps, which is almost like the introductory part of it. Following that, they can do skill programs, which I'll come on to. And then the third part, which is kind of like a bit more of an industry understanding, so music law and things like that.
Yeah.
So the development camp is the door opener, really. So they came in for the week. They learned, they worked in our studios. They recorded their vocals. They recorded them playing the instruments. And they reimagined these tracks. And at the end of it, they played those tracks on a proper A&R panel with representation from Hypnosis and all these people from sync teams who gave them honest feedback on their tracks. And then during that week, in between them having the studio sessions, we gave them insight talks, so talks about how to promote yourself as an artist on social media, for example. Another talk on creative design. So all these teams that they broke off into had to give their band a name, and then they had to design a logo to go with that, and our creative team would then make them the creative for their band. So it all gives them a bit more of a sense of what it's like to be in the industry.
That's interesting because we did exactly that. We went through the mood board of the logo and what you want to do, and then we sat down and had those conversations. But so essentially, it's like having almost how you would have a manager, but from the age of, what was it, 13
to 17? Yeah, the average age on that course we did in August was about 14.
Wow.
And so they learn all this industry understanding is probably the broader term for it.
Well, what does the project look like? You know, that Stranger Things brief. What is it? What do
basically they outlined, the certain scenes that they're looking for music for.
Okay, it's quite specific.
It's quite specific. Certain tracks that they're contemplating on using for the next series, because obviously in Stranger Things it's all about certain years.
Yeah.
And it's basically they might say, well, this track might work we want a breakbeat version or something, or we want this track as a chill out version. So you've got a bit of an understanding of what they want to come at the end of it. And then so after that week camp, we then surprised the kids by saying, well, actually, we're going to, these versions that you've done, we've actually edited them to a Stranger Things trailer. And we played the straight, and when you watch the back, you can actually watch if you go onto YouTube and search Northstar 360, you can actually see these trailers, and you can listen to the music that the kids did. and it's absolutely fucking mind-blowing, because when you put that music to the trailer, it's so powerful.
Wow.
And then we release the actual music as well on all the DSPs.
Oh, okay. So there's actually a product that gets.
So you can go onto Spotify now and search the tracks and the band names that the kids decided to call themselves, and they're on Spotify and Apple Music. In fact, 3 of the tracks actually charted in the alternative track on iTunes.
No way, that's amazing.
Yeah. So I mean, to come away, to go back to school and tell your mates, well, I've got a track on Spotify and I've got this trailer for Stranger Things with my voice on it and me playing guitar in it. It's fucking mind blowing. I would have killed to have done something like that at school.
Absolutely.
So that's the starting point. So now we're talking to other councils across the north, even some councils just north of London actually, who want to do these development camps for the kids in their area.
So the kids. So was it a summer camp thing?
That was a summer camp thing, yeah. But the goal moving forward is to do probably three cohorts every single year. So one in maybe around the Easter, one in the summer, and one towards the back end of the year. And then in between those development camps, the next stage, because it's really important that there's a follow-on from what we do. We don't want to do these camps and go, yeah, cheers kids, off you go, see you later. There's got to be an opportunity then for them to develop their learning even further. So the skill camps are the next phase of that. So if you've gone through your development camp and you're like, you know what, I really want to learn more about a songwriting. So you can do an 8-week songwriting course, which is like on a night class, so after school. Yeah. And the kids can do that program, but it's all mentored. So you're in a classroom, one-to-one, and you're learning with your mentor all along the way. And we do 3 camps. We do the skill programs. We do songwriting, music production, and film and photography. So they can do those 8-week courses. Then at the end of that, we try to get them to do internships. So potentially we talk to Sony, Warner, all these major labels about seeing if we can get these kids opportunities so they can develop their learning. Yeah. And then the final stage then would be industry understanding. So learning about music law, how to protect yourself as an artist, what to look for in contracts and publishing and PPL and neighbouring rights and all these things that you need to know as an artist, so that these kids, by the time they're 17, they're fully armed and equipped with where to go to next. And at the same time, building the networks to be able to know who to go to, a record label, and how to present themselves as an artist.
It's incredible that whole process. I mean, I did read the deck you sent me across a few weeks ago when we were chatting. But hearing it all back like that, it's making me realise how little I knew when I got into this. Yeah. I didn't have, and me and Sean have talked about it before in terms of not so much the music industry know-how, but more about guidance with regards to your health and how you look after yourself, right? Because I always say this, when you go to like Miami Music Conference or you go to ADE, all this behaviour of like partying, it's all enabled from the top down, right? So I was coming at it from this point of view and only thinking that was kind of where the guidance would have been great to have your manager going, right, maybe when you go to this place, when you say you're going to Australia, make sure you sleep this much and then don't drink on this gig because you're going to be knackered, all that stuff. Yeah. But this is a whole other level of knowledge. Like knowing even 10% of what you've talked about when I first signed with my first manager in 2015 would have been like, especially about the PPL and all that stuff. I had no fucking idea what it was about. I didn't even know. I was signing documents left, right, and centre. I didn't have a fucking clue what I was signing.
And this is quite common now. It's like I've been witness to young artists, because it goes back to what we were saying earlier about being excited about you're a young producer, you've got a track signed, someone puts a contract in front of you, you don't even read it, you just sign it. But there's been so many times that I've been witness to in my career of artists that have signed contracts that are really not right. Do you know what I mean? In terms of protecting the artist.
Oh, so, I know, yeah.
You've got to be really careful. And if you're not clued up on that, we teach you the basics of the things to look for in a contract, for example. How to protect yourself as an artist and how to, most importantly, make money from your music. Because a lot of artists just release music and think they get a check from their label and that's it.
Yeah, it's not.
But there's
like
not. There's like I've all reeled off before. There's so much more to it. And unless you've got somebody that's knowledgeable and knows how to, maximise that for their artist, then, you might as well piss it down the drain, haven't you?
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's just such an incredible project that you're working on. And I think especially for the knowledge on even just how to read contracts and know what not to sign away. From a very early stage in your career. In terms of, That's an interesting question. In terms of funding for this, I know you said the councils were on board and maybe another one, North London. Those, is it the photography, all those?
They would all be funded.
8 week. Yeah, I was going to say, are they funded or?
Yeah, they would be funded.
Private?
So basically, you have to go through the development camps to gain access to the skills. So our goal is to put between 750 to 1,000 kids through the complete program in the next 3 years.
Amazing.
But in order for us to do that, we need to raise probably the best part of £1 million. So
you're still looking to raise?
So we're talking to a lot of. There's lots of funding pots out there, but obviously that takes time and stuff. But we're working on that quite heavily because we've got the concept now. Everyone's, just like yourself, has sung praises about it all. I think we're onto something that could potentially be quite big, not only for the music scene, but the creative industries as a whole.
In the UK, the education system.
No, this is not. Yes, it's called Northstar 360, and obviously we're based in Talyard North. We're all about levelling up. We're Northerners.
Yeah.
As you can probably tell by my accent, you don't have to move to London to get into the music industry. There are opportunities, but I don't want this to be, this is a northern thing. It can be a whole UK-wide thing. Yeah. And my goal would be to, I've worked in this industry a long time. I've been through a lot. I'm at the point now, I'm 50 next year. I want to start giving something back, and if we can get more kids engaged with music and the creative industries and give them the tools in order for them to get there quicker, because as well as I do, artists are going from that to that in a very, very short space of time. If they're not equipped with the information that they know, then it's a quick and hard battle to learn.
Yeah, and painful, I imagine.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So if for people out there who are listening, if they were looking to get involved in the funding, where do they go? Do they've got a website or? Yeah,
you search for Northstar 360 on all the socials. You can email me, Lee Haslam, all one word, at northstar360.co.uk, and I can give you some information. But yeah, like I say, we're talking to all the AIM, the BIM. There's loads of people that we're talking to about funding, but hopefully we can get that over the line fairly quickly.
I think it's an amazing project, mate, and I hope you smash it. You've
Cheers,
got my
mate.
full support. If anything else that we can talk about on this podcast for it, you just let me know.
No, I appreciate it.
Is there anything we missed on the Northstar 360s?
No, that's it in a nutshell, really. So yeah, all good, mate.
Amazing. Well, we're coming to a close.
Yeah.
Now we've been quite serious, or quite not serious, but we've been a bit more serious this time than we normally were.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're talking about fucking weird shit on here.
Yeah. I was thinking that on the way down. I think I'm not.
Well, you've listened to it, so you know.
Yeah.
So it's up to you. We don't have to go there.
No. Okay. I think I've got one story.
Your maddest after story. I want to hear it.
I would say it's mad, but it's funny.
Just
back in we're talking like when I first started out, it must have been 96 or something like that, and I used to DJ. And my residence was the Doncaster Warehouse.
Lee, I was 7, just so you know.
Oh, thanks. For
my head was going, just say it, just do it.
Yeah, wanker. We'd gone. There was me and my best mate Dave and Stuart. We all lived in this den of iniquity, this house, and we always used to go back afterwards. And I can't remember what happened, but I think our girlfriends at the time challenged us to get dressed up as them.
Right.
So I just got a flashback of my best mate wearing a dress, and he got all dressed up and put all the makeup on, and they were all sat down on this sofa at this crack on with like trance music blasting out. Everyone's off the nut, and my best mate had totally forgotten that he'd arranged to play golf with his dad the next morning. So at 7 o'clock in the morning, they've got 3 blokes all dressed up in dresses and makeup and wigs.
He went,
and his dad walked in.
Oh, why he's coming?
Yeah, he's walked in.
He forgot he was coming.
He forgot all about it. He's coming cross-eyed, dressed as a girl, and he said, "Oh, so golf's off then."
He's not going anywhere.
Oh,
no one's making that tea time.
No, so he'll kill me for telling me that story, but there you go.
Oh, well, mate, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
No, it's a pleasure, mate.
It's really nice to see you, and I said this to every single guest that comes on. I haven't actually had 1 hour where we just sit and talk. One sober or two, actually just in general. We haven't actually sat for this long,
exactly.
had a conversation. And I think the Northstar 360 project's incredible. Yeah. I wish you the best of luck with it. And yeah, thanks for coming down.
No, thanks for having me, mate. It's been great to see you.
Nice one.
Cheers, buddy.
Does anybody know where the afters is?